Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story, a BDC Partners. We're a leading franchise and retail consulting firm, and this is our podcast by franchisors for franchisors, where we go behind the scenes with some of the most interesting characters in the franchising sector. I'm your host, Bruce McFarlane, my co-host, John Sully, and today we're here with Martin and Janie Rose, the owners of Blue Wheelers and Dash Dog Wash. So welcome.
Righto.
Thank you.
Righto, team.
Thanks for having us.
Tell us your fucking story.
John, it's franchising. It's a franchising story.
That's so
Sorry, John, I've never heard that before. Can you try and explain that in layman's terms?
I will.
Because I'd like
I'll
to
spell it for
actually,
you.
because I really don't understand.
Okay, so we're going to clean up things. So we're going to start. We're going to go right back. So we'll, ladies first. We'll
We
go.
have a Wayback machine here, do we?
Yeah. We're going to
Time
go in the
machine.
time machine.
Time
so
machine.
back, where
cool.
did you, where did you grow up? Where'd you go to school? What did you enjoy as kids? We're going to do start with that. So
Yeah, sure. Well, I was born in Glasgow, Scotland,
okay.
and came to Australia when I was 18 years old in 1981. You can now
work
do the
that
math.
out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I had a great childhood in Scotland. Lots of snow, lots of dark evenings at 4 p.m. walking home from school with my little orange armbands on so I didn't get run over by a car. And my dream in life, to be honest, right back in those early days was to be something called a travel, not consultant. It was more like you'd call them a tour operator these days, because travelling for us, from Scotland to Europe was very easy. So we travelled a lot when I was young. And I just wanted to be one of these people that greeted all the tourists and said, got them on the bus and got them to their hotel and got them all checked in.
Because most people that go to Glasgow leave really quickly.
Yeah, correct. It's a great place
Not a
to
tourist
pass
town,
through.
I wouldn't have thought.
Actually, not the case anymore. No,
Edinburgh,
it now is actually.
Yeah?
Glasgow is well and truly on the map these
In fact,
days.
Glasgow is cooler than Edinburgh.
Way cooler.
Way cooler.
But yeah, in those
Really?
days when I was growing up, it was not.
In the 90s when I went there, we drove in and we drove out.
Yeah, correct.
It was a rough
way
place.
to
It was
get-
rough.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Scary
Yeah,
place.
it
So you,
still has
so you were
its
there
rough
as a teen, so all your childhood and teenage years.
Yeah, through until I was
so you
18.
learned to fight, knife fights early
Yeah,
days.
absolutely. Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
that rough?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
The
really?
Glasgow
The
kiss.
kiss, yeah.
The Glasgow kisses.
Well, it's famous for being really
That's
rough.
the hit.
Like,
I
Yeah,
thought she was
yeah.
going to be. She offered me a Glasgow kiss, and I thought she was trying to be romantic, and I didn't understand.
and then you've got a broken nose and 3 broken teeth.
Yes.
So what did your mum and dad do, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. My mum actually owned a couple of businesses in fashion and hairdressing, and my dad also was in fashion. He was a fashion agent, so he was a warehouse. He had a warehouse, and he basically sold wholesale.
Right.
So
At school, did you want to get into business? Like, is that, when you were young
not
at all?
really. No, that probably didn't really take off until I met Martin, and I thought that I found that there was another way to actually make dollars, and it wasn't necessarily being an employee.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we might go to Martin and then we'll come back to other stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, so where did you grow up in
In
Australia?
Melbourne.
Yeah.
Born and bred, in fact, about within a 10K radius of the studio for most of my life, and went to a grammar school in Melbourne with one of those places where conceptually you had a carrot in a place that the sun doesn't shine,
Nice.
and lots of boys running around in shorts, no girls, or boys' school. And it was a conducive environment for testosterone, lots of fighting, ball sports, and a place to personally challenge you. It wasn't fun, and it wasn't cohesive. It was certainly an aggressive playground to learn survival techniques.
Really? Okay. Well, I won't ask what the school was then.
I think under the circumstances, given my description, it should remain anonymous.
Do you go to the reunions?
I've been to 2 of them.
I was about to say it sounded very scary.
It was. These
grammar school.
hands
Yeah,
used to
no,
come home
compared to
occasionally, occasionally skinned, and my father would ask what happened, and my answer was, "Don't ask, don't tell."
So you were getting in quite a few blues.
Yeah, it was a rough and tumble place.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep. And,
Okay.
And
That's interesting.
And I know a little. Your parents came to Australia and not so great.
Yeah, well, my
background?
father came out from France in 1948. He found living in France during the Second World War to be a less than enjoyable place to be. School was disrupted, life was disrupted. And he just looked at a map and said, what's the furthest place from Europe where there's less likely to be another world war? And he looked at the map and said, what's that place? And sure enough, he applied and he and all his family came to Australia in the late 1940s. He was French, couldn't speak barely a word of English, and would hop onto a tram and go to work in the early 1950s, and people would stare at him the moment he opened his mouth. So he very quickly learnt to speak English with a very Australian accent. And the sad part about it was he married an Australian woman, my mother, and she couldn't speak a word of French. And of course, as a consequence, I grew up in a very Anglo-Saxon, very Australian, very boring environment with not one foreign language spoken at home. So, of course, my French is absolutely disastrous.
Wow. Okay. So is your dad still alive?
No, he passed away just a couple of years ago.
Right.
He lived a very full life and made just a couple of days shy of his 90th.
Wow, that's good
And he says that he had a grand adventure because any day that he could survive the Second World War and come to Australia and live, every day after that was a gift. And he passed that gift on to me. Adventurous spirit, carpe diem, seize the day.
So how old was he when he came out?
He was 18.
In 1948.
18. He was born in 1930.
1930. And so you said he came out with his family. So mum's, dad, all that.
Mother and sister and brother.
Right. Okay. Right. All right. Good. Very good.
And what was fun for you as a kid? What did you enjoy doing besides beating other kids up?
Well, that wasn't. It was often about self-defense.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just all boys' schools were full of testosterone, and it was like it was push and shove.
Yeah.
Game on.
I went to one of those. It wasn't argy-bargy.
Really?
Not for me, probably because I was quick. Could you run?
No. I've never been a runner.
Explains a lot.
Yes.
I was fast and got faster.
Mind you, I can see right now that of the two of us, you'd definitely be the sprinter.
Do you think?
Yeah, I look at you and I go, I don't know, John, you're amazing.
I'm a long-distance walker. I go at least 20 metres a day.
Whereas my knees are so shot from snow skiing that I can't, I couldn't run to save my life. Still can't run.
So brothers, sisters?
Yes, all of the above. I've got an older younger brother and a younger sister who now lives in France. And in fact, is living in Paris, doing social media and podcasts and other things for major fashion houses.
Wow.
So we were in Paris a couple of months ago, and our last night in Paris wasn't spent with her because she was off doing some work for Chanel. And that wasn't Channel 9, by the way.
Super interesting. That's
So
pretty.
she's-
And your brother, your older brother?
Older brother has his own business. Our younger brother, unfortunately, is no longer with us.
Right,
He was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And, of course, we all know that lawyers live well and die young.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. There's no lawyers in this room, are there?
He's not feeling very well.
No.
How are you feeling, John?
So what did you want to be when you grow up? Like you wanted to get into business?
Always.
Yeah.
My father came to this country with literally a shirt on his back, and he learnt the trade of being a watchmaker and jeweller from his father, bought the trade, and that's what he and his brother did. And he effectively taught business when I was under the kitchen table. And so I grew up in the house of business. And so to me, there was no other place that was that was my comfort place. So I always knew that I'd end up somehow doing something involved in a business. It was never clear what the vehicle would be.
And what about your early career? Did you study at university when you finished school?
No, I didn't. So I moved to Australia when I was 18.
Yeah.
So just after I had a year off travelling, and then I moved to Australia very begrudgingly.
Yeah.
With my parents, and I got straight into the workforce.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just started off with a very small marketing agency, and from there, I always remember my sister saying to me, when you've had some experience, you can apply for the ads that are, the display ads rather than just the little written ads in the newspaper. Do you remember those? Big display ads. And that's what I did, and I got my first job at Channel 10, I think back in 1984. And then I worked there for a year and a half. I was in publicity. Then I moved up to Sydney, and I worked for Channel 9 up in Sydney doing much the same thing. And
Did you enjoy that? What did you think of Sydney?
It. Sydney was brilliant.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a good
and
spot.
working for Channel 9 back in those days, I mean, it'd be a very different experience now.
They were Crow's Nest, weren't they? Was that where the offices were?
Yeah, Artarmon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked directly with Sam Chisholm and...
So why did your parents come out? What?
Oh, well, my parents came out to Australia because Glasgow was going into a recession.
Right.
My dad had a big fear of growing old in the cold weather.
Yeah.
So they just decided to make a change, and it was either going to be Canada or Australia.
Well, that's cold too.
Yeah, exactly. And basically what happened, he had friends in Melbourne that reached out to each other, and he said, come to Melbourne. It's, you know, in those days it really was... What was the term they used to call Australia?
The lucky country.
The lucky country, thank you. Yeah.
So that was that the Scottish equivalent of the £10 pom that we were referring to? Was it a bit like
Just
that?
after that.
Just
after that. Yeah, but it was still very much white Australia. I was travelling, and in order for my parents to get that final visa stamp to say, yes, you've got your residency, they would not do that until I came home, and they've got to see me in the flesh. Literally, wouldn't...
So that's a big call for... Your parents would have been early 40s.
Early 40s. And I remember thinking, why would you want to move to the other end of the world
as
at
an 18-year-old,
that
that's
stage
with
in
all
your
your
life?
friends. Like that's not great. Like I get why your dad did it. That's a bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, like as an 18-year-old.
No, my parents, and my dad refused, never went back to Scotland.
Oh, really?
Never once.
So has he got brothers and you got uncles and
they're
aunties?
gone now, my parents, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
I've got
as
a
well?
sister,
The sister.
that's also here. Yeah,
Okay.
she's a bit of an entrepreneur herself. So
Yeah, right.
she's had a couple of
It's in the blood.
businesses. Yeah.
Now, can I get into the juicy stuff? So how did you guys meet?
Are you going to tell the story or me?
I'll start
'Cause
it
you
and you
have
can
a very
finish it.
different version.
You tell me the story. You tell us
Which
the truth.
actually links into later career choices quite opportunely. So I was a man about town with a red fancy Mazda, and I thought I was pretty cool, and I liked ice cream. And I'm looking at someone in the corner of my eye, and she's laughing at me. Well, I was tall and I was skinny at that stage, and I actually had hair until I met you. True. And so I'd roll up in front of this beautiful ice cream parlour in Turok Road, South Yarra, and one day this amazing woman with hair out here and a really unbelievably gorgeous Scottish accent was behind the counter scooping ice cream. And I walked in there and I thought, oh, I'll have some of that. And, of course, I was talking about the ice cream.
Yes.
And I'd always pick the flavours closest to the client so that you have to lean forward to scoop the ice creams. That's, of course, where chocolate and coffee was always kept. It was only coincidental that was the case. And she actually remembers me coming in there as a potential shopper. And, of course, I never asked her out, what would I know back then? I had, two ears, one mouth and no brain. And I didn't actually ask her out. Next thing you know, I find out she'd moved to Sydney. She got married. I was going, I thought she was pretty cute. I didn't do anything about it.
What's the saying? The early bird catches the worm.
Yes, but unfortunately the early bird...
Flew the coop.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, yes, I did. So this was my very first job. Actually, no, my second part-time job when I came off the plane arriving into Melbourne. I worked also at Myer for a while. Martin just used to come by every Saturday to get
where were you
ice
working?
cream. It was an ice cream shop. It was an independent shop, and it was called Coney's Ice Cream in just down below Toorak Village, just sort of opposite the Como now. I worked in there every Saturday and sometimes at night. It was such a fun job. And then life just moved on. I went to Sydney. I got a job at Channel 9 in Sydney, moved up to Sydney, got married, had a little trial run at the thing to see if I liked it. Didn't like it so much. Came back to Melbourne. Came back to Melbourne when I was working for Village Roadshow. They moved me back, which was brilliant because my
So how long
family
were you
were
up
here.
there for?
I was in Sydney for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Great
and
city.
you left the first guy up there.
Left him long gone. He's actually now he's like a playwright or comedy writer in America. So
Wow.
yeah, he went on to
So where were you
different
living up there? Were you living around Artarmon? Or were you
no, I
close
was
to-
living on the other side. I was living in Bellevue Hill.
Yeah, good spot.
Yeah,
I went to
beautiful.
Cranbrook
Sydney's
there, you know,
beautiful.
that school in Bellevue Hill.
Yeah,
remember that?
yeah. Cranbrook
That's
was a
where I
very
went to
famous school. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I dragged
school.
it down, the reputation
Yeah.
down when I was there.
He was parents kicked him out of Wagga, so that's
Yes.
You need to leave the house.
Yeah, Wagga
Yeah.
Wagga.
Yep.
So okay, so then you come back.
Yep.
How does that all start?
I
Did you
think
see
we
him
just
driving by?
No, I think we actually caught up at a party, somebody's 30th birthday, and by that stage I was working at Village Roadshow and I always had free movie tickets, so it was a really easy ask to say, "Oh, I'm going to see the premiere of this movie or that movie. You know, do you want to come?" And that's kind of how it started. We had a really good friendship for probably about 6 months before I think anything really developed.
Yeah.
I want to rephrase this. What she did was that she bribed me with
movie tickets.
popcorn,
Do you get free popcorn?
and
he
ice
likes
cream.
lollies too. And we know he's got a bit of
Yeah.
sweet tooth.
and you know, I had no idea. You know, again, you know, 2 ears,
We
one,
women were
you know, one
wicked.
mouth, no
We're
brain.
wicked.
She bribed me, and next thing you know, I'm 6 foot, she's 5 foot in a good day, and I don't know how it happened, but she leapt up and kissed me. Well, that's my story
Very
anyway.
forward.
Yeah.
Yes, she has
And
a
that
different
was
version
it.
of that story, but that works for
No.
me.
Pretty similar.
So what year is this?
That was back in 1993.
Oh, so you're already in the business.
Yes,
got- you
you
No,
were
no,
already in New Zealand Natural.
Already in New Zealand
and I
Natural.
was
New
working
Zealand
at
Natural. Yeah. So New Zealand. So you're the master franchisee for New Zealand Natural, and you're at Village Roadshow.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So obviously,
the ice cream.
I've got the ice cream finally that I always
You
wanted.
knew
that
she
I,
liked ice cream.
yeah, I always thought she wanted me for my ice cream. That's the way I always thought, and actually, I to this day, I think that's probably the
Oh,
case.
God.
So how
good
did all that
memories of
start?
those
How did you
days.
get into New Zealand Natural?
Yeah. What were you doing before that?
Well, stupidly,
Besides trying to pick up girls in
my
Surat.
father, yeah, that's okay. My father stupidly said that you should get into the property market
Yeah.
just before the 1990 property crash.
Right.
So as I got basically wiped out and had negative equity and owed the bank money I didn't have, I looked at my options and concluded that I had started off my career as an employee working for Rain and Horn Commercial in retail leasing. And so if I knew retail, maybe I should get involved in a retail business. And the rest, I say, is history. I saw
What year
something
was that?
advertised.
What year was that?
I worked there from 82 through till 86 for, in fact, Christopher Lang
Yeah.
and a guy called Alan Reid, who went on to do some developing and made a couple of dollars. And Chris, of course, was the founder's son of Gardner and Lang.
Because I started at Rain and Horn Commercial doing retail leasing in 87. I started in the mail room
Where?
in Sydney.
Okay, well, I was...
I was about to say you maybe took his job.
Okay, so in that case, I'll tell you a story about what you call the mail room. My very first day, I remember being wheeled in and Chris Lang meeting me because he was the owner of Rain and Horn Commercial and saying, there's your room, your desk in your room, but you can't take that. Go and sit in the file room. And he said, you're going to sit here and I'll come back in an hour's time, and if you haven't worked out why you're here, you'll stay here until you do. And he started opening filing cabinets, pull out files, start reading. He comes back, says, well, have you worked out why you're here? And I said, the person with the best files wins. He said, go and take your desk.
Yeah, right.
And it was the most profound understanding of business that I ever got from anyone, is that if you don't have a file, you are likely to get exposed.
We're going to talk about legal disputes later because that's what we say to all the clients.
Yes,
Really?
absolutely.
Oh, no, it's right. It's true
Yeah.
because quite often in litigation, I don't practice in litigation, but that's what the litigators always tell the commercial lawyers: make sure that you've got the best file because if you end up in court, it's not it's who's got the best evidence. that
100%.
often
So
wins.
have you followed that through your career?
He's absolutely methodical
Really?
about filing and keeping files and keeping
Good on
everything
you.
in writing. So
So
Yeah.
we, unfortunately, Frank, we're covering to the end of the story rather than the start. So I might hold this back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information about this whole litigation and file. So let's get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to it later. Well, so New Zealand Natural, you've opened up. You're the master franchisee. So you've
Correct.
got out property. You've lost your money in property and went, I'm going to be a franchise. I'll get into franchising.
So I got into that
1990. Victoria's in shit.
Correct. Correct. And retail stuff. But the
I was
landlords.
in retail then too. Shit.
Yeah. And the landlords turn around and say, well, we'd love to expand. You know, what can we do to get you in? So it was a land of opportunity as long as you had a good concept. And at that stage in 1990, it was a tired concept. It didn't have any, you know, what you'd call sex appeal. It was cute. It had nice ice cream, but it was really daggy.
Many stores around Australia?
At low 20s, I think I had 23 nationally. And there were only 3 stores in Melbourne. And I basically said to them, I'm not interested in buying the store and becoming a franchisee. I'd like to join the business. They said, well, you can't join us, but you can buy the master franchise for Victoria. I bought that. And effectively, the 2 stores that were there were pretty badly located and poorly run. So we ended up effectively back at 0. And I then took it to, when I left, I think 16 stores.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have company-owned ones in that as well?
I had always a company-owned store.
Yeah.
And the reason was that philosophically, if you ran a store, then you would be a better franchisor if you understood customer demand and product and staff management. It helped me actually cut my teeth in how to actually be a better businessman by actually owning stores. So by being a franchisee and a master franchisee, it gave me an incredibly strong foundation to build business.
That's good. Married at that stage? No.
When I bought it, no. In 1990, 91, I was still single. In fact, Janie hadn't even arrived on the scene.
No, 93 I came
Came
on
back.
board,
Yeah, okay.
and we were married in 95, so he was well established in ice cream.
Yeah.
Well
It
established.
was really good. It was good for the freezer.
Yeah.
So,
And you've had kids, so it's good for the kids.
Well, we started having kids, and
They like ice
they
cream?
loved it.
They still like ice cream. In fact, the only problem I have now is that we have to pay retail, and of
Yeah.
course that's a
And
challenge.
they weren't those like pissy little like tubs. They were like
Big
boxes.
yeah,
like,
16-litre
yeah.
boxes.
Well, he just had, because my parents owned a supermarket, so I grew up working in tucker bag supermarkets
Sure.
from when I was a kid, and so I had access to lollies galore
Yeah.
as a kid, which is really
Yeah.
good because my teeth have all rotted now. but I still like ice cream because I have access to ice cream.
Ice cream.
So how many kids have you got?
3
And they
3 boys.
3
Boys.
boys, and
Yep.
they were. And I know Martin told me actually quite recently, family businesses. We were talking, because
Yes.
my kids are in the business with me at the moment. We were talking about family business, but
And he took no advice from me at all. Whatever I said to him, he completely threw out the window because my advice that was free and he considered it worthless was I would never go into business with my children. And of course,
La,
I don't,
la, la, la.
la, la, la,
Yeah.
la. What would
I've got
Martin
daughters,
know?
not sons, though.
Oh, that's easy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Much
It's
easier. You can
Mar-
definitely go into business with
No,
daughters. Definitely. They're so much easier to push around.
Yeah.
Like, what were you thinking?
I
Sorry about
think
me,
it
it's
depends
maybe-
on the dynamic in the family.
So we've got so we're having babies and opening ice cream shops, and things are all going pretty well, and then things didn't go well for a little while.
Correct.
Yes. Back to the what you learned.
So did that all blow up? Did
Yeah.
New Zealand Natural blow up?
Not really.
It
You
sort
don't
of
have to
did.
get into it if you don't
The
want to talk
relationship was challenged when I concluded that I had done a fair bit of input into the national business and had made great strides in changing the business and helping them redesign and really became, instead of a supply-only business, to a full-service franchise, and their first operation is manuals. And I had brought a lot to the table, and I suggested that maybe I could fold my master and join them, and that didn't happen. So I packed up my bags conceptually and said, you stay there, I'll stay here, I'll do my job, you do yours. And when I stopped giving and they wanted to sort of take, there was a level of friction. The relationship changed because I closed the door. And I accept the fact that I signed a contract, the contract was a contract, so then I accepted that contract and said, you do your job, I'll do mine. But it wasn't satisfying for me, and I think 1 + 1 stopped equaling 3. And I think business is all about 1 + 1 equaling 3. And when it equaled less than 2, over time, I realised it was my time to go.
And what year was that? So that was
2003.
late 90s, sorry. Yeah.
Late 90s, it was getting tough. And by 2003, the business I saw it as going, it had one of two directions it could go. It could start flying again, or it could go flat or fall. And they actually had a new general manager and some new senior management, a new owner, and things were heading the right direction. And I just felt they've got a future, but it doesn't involve me. So in 2000,
then there was also, sorry to interrupt, the stressors of dealing with the owners of shopping centres and
the landlords.
the landlords,
As
and
opposed
dealing
to,
with the
so you got
leases.
landlord issues and a franchisor.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
You'd wake up in a sweat in the
and
middle of the night
plus
if you had
franchisees are probably not always smooth sailing as well. So
Really?
yeah.
Really?
but seriously, Jenny, I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking I had to go and meet a landlord the next day because they had basically, it's a shocking characterisation, but the moment you give your sales to a landlord, you're putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank. And the moment they know your sales, they know exactly how much you're making and therefore how much rent they can charge you before you either stay or go. If they don't want you to stay, they can put your rent over the tipping point and the business that you've built is gone. Or they decide they want you to stay at lease renewal, they want a new fit out, and of course, massive amount of rent because they suddenly see you're doing really well. That's lose-lose business. So
But did you really tell them what you were turning over? Didn't you bullshit? We used to lie our asses off. Would never tell them the real
He's
amount.
very honest, my husband.
Really?
Unfortunately,
I
we
have
had
to
tied
say.
tills and we had staff, and they got every cent of our sales turnover. It was a
Systemised.
It was completely in those days. The guys who owned New Zealand Natural had a really great IT backbone, and of course, the liability that was the landlords saw it all.
Yeah.
So it stopped being fun. It stopped being fun dealing with owners of shopping centres. It stopped being fun dealing with franchisees who were getting frustrated, and I stopped enjoying it. And I concluded that I'd run my race and that someone else could take the business on, and I sold.
So you sold the master rights in 2005?
Four,
yeah. And so 14 years of running that, and then
late 2004. So it was actually close to 15 years, but yes.
And you'd had a company owned, so you sold your company owned.
Sold the lot.
Yep. Back to the franchisor.
No, the stores sold to new franchisees, and a new buyer, a new master franchisee took over from me.
Yep.
And my operations / sidekick stayed on, and basically kept on running the business with him. So he took it over and was,
I'm just thinking about the fact that at the end of the day, you walked away with a framed glass box with an ice cream scoop in the box, saying thank you for all your time.
That was it.
What's wrong with that?
It was
extremely
fabulous.
generous.
I felt loved.
So it wasn't.
I felt the
so
love.
And so are you in the business at this stage?
No. I've had babies.
Yeah.
I'm not even really working. Just
you didn't
helping
go back
out.
to the TV.
Oh no, I didn't go back to Village Roadshow because they made me redundant at 8 months pregnant.
Oh, that's good.
Very
and
sweet.
9 years.
Sweet
and
of them.
8 months.
After, yeah.
4 months shy of long service leave. So you
Yeah.
can imagine also that went down very well.
Yeah, what a great culture of a business.
Great. It's not
Yeah.
doing so well these days, so let's not
Yeah.
speak ill of them.
So then
Bless
what?
them.
So then we got out of this
So,
and we realised
the person who helped me
landlords
sell
aren't
my
fun.
business said to me, I have your next business, but it's not ready for sale. So I had, in between a small noodle business I had got involved with, so I actually had something to keep me involved with. It was called Noodleworks. It doesn't exist any longer. But it was, around the same time that sushi and noodles were getting big, and it was a nice play, but I didn't see any future in that either. I was a round peg in a square hole in that business. And
Did you start it or you just joined?
I joined it as a partner to the person who ran it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go there.
No, let's not dive too deep
So
on
let's
that
just say
one.
Noodle Box went a little bit.
Yes.
It went a lot faster, and this business basically
It was more of the same.
Yeah.
It was
It
a
was a
little
Me
bit
Too
of-
business.
Yeah.
Did it take you a little while to get over the New Zealand Natural stuff?
for 6 months I'd still wake up in the middle of the night thinking
Yeah.
I'm going to see a landlord.
Bit of
That's how
PTSD.
traumatic it was.
Yep.
And I don't mean to disparage
I
them.
get it.
It was simply that I found that the way I like doing business isn't necessarily as adversarial. And again, I keep on using this expression, 1 + 1 = 3. And for owners of shopping centres, that wasn't what was important to them. And so my values and theirs parted.
Yeah. It took me a while mine was a little bit different at the end, but I had similar experiences with one of the major guys where they were making us move the kiosk 2 feet to the left because we'd put it where they said, but they made a mistake and there was, they had Safeway exclusion zones.
Yes, and you were within the Safeway exclusion zone.
And I said, well, it's not our fault. He said, well, it's not ours, so you have to move it or else you're out. So, and I was like, really? They'd made it. And it was like, so you're not even going to, anyhow. And it still makes my blood boil, just that whole thing. It was ridiculous. And it was their fault, ultimately.
Well, one of my great stories is that I negotiated tenancy, I negotiated a rent, I negotiated everything. And when I put my tenancy design, they said, well, you can't have all those menus and signage. And I said, what? So people are just going to walk up and guess what they want to order? They said, yes, that's a modern, interpretation of shop fit out and fantastic design. And I said, I'll make a deal with you. I'll cut my menu boards in half and have half of the presentation you want me to have when you cut your rent in half. And I just stood there silently in a meeting and just sat there quietly with my arms crossed and just waited.
Yeah.
And
Did you get your
they
menu
blinked.
board?
They blinked.
Did they drop the rent?
No, they wanted their rent and I got my shopping centre signage that I wanted.
They wouldn't drop the rent.
Absolutely.
But that was what used to frustrate me as well. You spend like $100,000, $200,000 on branding, new designs, layouts of shops to make it look really cool. And someone that was earning $50,000 or $70,000 a year at a shopping centre said, no, you can't have that. Just would drive me nuts. Anyhow, but look, we won't get into that. That's for a beer and a glass of wine.
Another
later on.
podcast.
But it was, that's a tough time. I think for franchisors that are listening to this, I think a lot of times they are not prepared to discuss their feelings and the shit that they go through. And I certainly know, from my point of view, I had a week where when we lost one of our drivers, and one of our packers, and you do get a bit of PTSD with some of these businesses, particularly for. Did you have a business partner?
No.
You're on your own.
Yes.
So you're coming home, laying it out, and that's all you sort of your only way you can release some stress, I suppose. Probably talking to your mates and things, but it builds up. That shit gets to you. You got to be really understanding that it is there and needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're on your own.
My lesson from all of this is that you can only control what you can control. You have to actually recognise that the difference issues that within your control, issues that aren't, and know where to focus your attention. And if things aren't in your control and you focus on those issues, then effectively you're digging yourself a conceptual grave. And so I always worked on my controllables and managed all my time working on those. And that was the only way in which I could manage my business. Because if I got lost into issues such as owners of shopping centres and the challenges of dealing with them, I couldn't focus on the people who needed me most, which was my franchisees. They always came first. I remembered that they were the reason I woke up in the morning, is to help them grow their businesses. And so I kept running my business and their businesses for what I call the greater good. And that's what led me to my success. And at some point you have to abandon the hope that you can actually control everything in your business.
Pick your battles.
Pick your battles, exactly.
Yeah.
So you've come out of it, and I've heard you talk about this before, but not having landlords in your life, in your next business venture, was one of the key reasons that you're looking at other businesses. So, and how did you get to dogs?
Okay. So
did you own a dog at the time?
No.
No, I'll just tell the story. He came home one day and he threw this information memorandum, down on my desk, on the table actually, and he said, I've just found our new business, bang. And I just saw the business was called Hydro Dog at the time, and I went, dog washing? You don't even like dogs. What are you talking about? He said, I may not love dogs yet, but I love this business. And now we do have a dog, and who does the dog love the most in our family? Him.
Yeah.
What sort
So
of dog?
annoying.
What sort of dog is it?
Lulu, who's a miniature Labradoodle.
Right.
and she's my favourite daughter.
She's the love of the true love of his life.
Let's wait. If Janie and I were ever have an argument and would have to actually have a change of home arrangements,
A divorce.
I would be taking Lulu, and there would be Third World War.
And I say, well, I actually got the dog. It was my idea, and it's my dog.
I know people that have separated that actually still share the dogs.
Yeah,
Really?
it
Yes.
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
They're
The
like
dog
your
goes backwards
children.
and, I think Jane's dog goes backwards and forwards.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. I remember talking about that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so how did you get onto Hydrodog? Where did that come up?
Okay, the person who sold my business said, I've got your next business.
Yes.
And he said, but it's not for sale yet. Couple of months away, 6 months, 9 months. I was still in the noodle business, very happy, trying to juggle everything. And I gave him a list. This is the list. No landlords, no leases, no debtors, no creditors, and no stock.
No staff would be there.
And I said, good luck. And he said, tick, 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 and tick. No landlords, because the only shop conceptually is my office.
Yeah.
So it's a one lease. No debtors, because basically it's money is paid in advance. No creditors, because we pay people on time. And so on. The entire business is basically intellectual property management, and we outsource most of what we do. People make our shampoos, our uniforms are made off site, the trailers are made by someone else, so we can run our business out of an office and strip it back to what we consider the essentials of what really makes great business, which is very competent, very responsible people empowering franchisees to success and getting the people who make these products that we need in our business, bring them in to our business as required. So the entire business is basically a people management, franchisee management, and intellectual property management business. It ticked every box. It was great.
And
So how big was it? Sorry, when you bought it?
It was about 110, but again, we're walking through a landmine field. The people who sold me the business were very creative in the way they managed the business for the last 6 months, and there were a number of franchisees who may or may not have been as successful as they would have liked, but they stayed around long enough for the sale to go through, and in the first month we had a significant number of people who said, I'm going broke and there's the trailer, don't call me, I'll call you.
So you closed a few pretty quickly.
We closed
Well,
a few.
it wasn't a question of closing, it
They
was
just walked away. Yeah.
they just said, it's outside, good luck.
Yes. But also over the course of probably the first year of the business, we realised very quickly that we had to strip this business back and start over to a degree. So
what did you go down to? What would you?
We got close to 100, but it wasn't just the numbers, it was more the philosophy. The manual that they gave me initially was 26 pages. Now that included a cover, 3 pages of jokes and an index. That's not a manual, that's laughable, it's comedic. And, I also had master franchisees all over Australia who were not quite mutinous, but we met with them and we thought that we'd be meeting, people who were happy to see us. And I think the very first meeting, the master franchisee who I ended up getting along with best of all sat down at the table and said, Martin, you seem like a nice guy. I don't give a fire truck what you have to say. I don't give a fire truck what you think. And I don't give a fire truck what you actually are going to do today. I'm only interested in what you're going to do for the next 6 or 12 months because we've been absolutely lied to for the last 3 years and we're over it. So either you're going to deliver or we're all gone. And we walked into a mutiny and to master franchisees, 5 master franchisees, as a lynch mob. And
So each state master, it's all
Yeah.
the whole
Yes.
country set
Yeah.
up. Okay.
it was. No longer.
No
but
longer.
It was. Yeah.
so you can imagine that we're fresh in the business. And I said, okay, so give me a list of everything you want. And they gave me a list and it was huge. And I said, you've given us 12 months of work. And they, using that colourful language, again, we don't give a fire truck. We want you to, what was that word again? I'm sorry.
He's much more polite.
Oh, sorry.
He's much
Sorry,
more
I'm
polite than me.
I've forgotten that word. I'm glad someone remembers
You're too
it.
polite.
Way too polite. So cut to the chase. I said, okay, 12 months it is. I agree. And then I came back from that meeting, worked 7 days and 7 nights, and literally almost worked myself into a, complete blithering mess.
Yeah.
But called a meeting and said, I think it's time we all catch together. The last meeting wasn't very productive and I'd like to share with you some things that I've done. And basically I walked into that meeting and said, you asked for this, bang, you asked for this, bang. And their entire 12-month list that I said, I did it in 6 months. I said, you said jump and I said how high, and I've delivered. And since that's our relationship moving forward, that's the deal. So from now on, whenever I say jump, you need to say how high. I said, I came on board here thinking I was joining a team of friends and collaborators and I'd want to work with you. And our conversation started off on the very first meeting, very first moment. I used to be a master franchisee. I've walked in your shoes and I'm here to partner with you. And I was slapped back and said, you're not our friend, you're not our partner, you're there to deliver. And I went, so now it's your turn. Now you deliver. And 2 master franchisees sold literally within what their business is up and sold straight away because they realised the game was over, that they actually had a person who was going to deliver and deliver much more than they ever expected, and hold them accountable.
With when you were thinking of buying the business, obviously the points that you raised, but understanding the dynamics of the franchise is really hard from the outside until you get in. And so, if someone was looking to buy a franchise now, would you how much due diligence do you think they can actually uncover that? That, what you walk into.
How do you get that sentiment?
Yeah, what would you do to try and figure that out before you've written a big check?
Yeah. It's a really good question.
That's a tough question. The answer was that I think they worded up their master franchisees and made sure that I got the answers that were right. And the problem was that if I had sent someone else blind in, so let's just say, John, it was you, and you'd gone blind and saying, hey, I'm looking at buying a master franchise, the door would have been slammed shut on you. There's no way they'd have even talked to you. I'm not interested to talk to the owners, whatever. The problem of due diligence is you can only get the information that people want to make available to you. And often it's coloured by people who have not necessarily the best of good faith. And so I suppose in speaking through today's terms, the franchise disclosure register and a whole raft of legislative changes have taken some of the smoke and mirrors out of franchising, and I consider this to actually be something that's highly valuable. Is that the current ACCC and the legislative regime and the whole government approach to franchising about full disclosure, I think is truly transformative. And I actually welcome this, and I go, how lucky are we to live in this, today. My problem is that sometimes franchisees don't fully disclose, and that the onus isn't on them as much as it is on us. And I look at franchising as a long-term strategic partnership. And so if we're required to fully disclose, there should be consequences when a franchisee buying doesn't fully disclose.
Yep, I agree. So you bought 110.
Yes.
Goes back to 100 or whatever.
Close.
I'd argue that. I'd say it went back to about 80 or 90 initially.
Maybe 90-ish.
Yeah.
And then so you tidied it all up.
We rebranded.
Rebranded then?
Yeah.
No.
I missed a step.
You've missed a big step. Because Hydro Dog was Hydro, water, dog, wash the dog, we ran that from effectively 2006 through till 2012. And during that time, we saw a business that had different standards all over Australia. For example, in Western Australia, South Australia and Victoria, which were the late states to develop, they had a reasonably good reputation. They had reasonably new trailers. But the moment you went anywhere else further north, New South Wales, ACT and Queensland, you had 3 different trailers, you had multiple standards, you had a conceptual business where they'd turn up, they'd wash the dog in 15, 20 minutes, not even dry the dog, hand it back wet. It's called dunk and run.
Yep.
In Victoria, that same job would be a 45-minute job that would be charged 3 times as much. So you
There
had
was no national standards across at all. Like everybody was basically running their own race.
And sorry, just quickly, sorry to interrupt, just to go back. So this was an Aussie business, and
Totally.
it was some punter had started it in Australia.
Two brothers
Two
started
brothers.
it.
Right. Okay. Good. Sorry.
Two
you
brothers
bought off them.
created
We
it.
bought it off them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
two
okay.
brothers created it, literally started washing dogs themselves.
Yeah.
Ran the business for a while, I think from 1996 through, or 1994 through to 1996, they came up with the concept of franchising, and they came up with the concept of the big blue dog, which is what you see on the road today.
Yeah.
But those big blue dogs were few and far between.
There were 3 of
I
them.
think there was maybe 3 across the country. And then there was square boxes, there was metal trailers. It was a mishmash of
Dog's
nothing.
breakfast.
It was a dog's breakfast.
you.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Touche.
So you tied it all that
we
up.
tied it all up. And so while you call it the wild, wild west, for want of a better description, business without too much structure, growing topsy-turvy with master franchisees who had a desire to grow without consequence, we actually got to 200 franchisees. But we had always said from 2006 onwards that there will always be the circumstance where everyone will have to train to wash, clip and groom. We had wash only, we had some clipping, but there were, again, no national standards. So we said from 2006 onwards, we made everyone clear the future of the business is the blue dog and everyone will have to wash, clip and groom. And when we finally had a national conference in 2012, released the blue dog,
And the name
and
Blue
the
Wheelers.
name change and all the new standards and all the training, we had a whole raft of franchisees who said, leave me alone. I'm not reskilling. I'm not going to buy a blue dog. I'm not going to change anything. Basically, take a long one off a short pier.
Yeah, they couldn't deal with the changes. They couldn't see that we were forward thinking. They were, they were very stuck in their hydro dog ways, and they just we just want to wash dogs, leave us alone.
We had approximately half the team at that time doing wash only. Now, if I talk to any person in dog grooming today, the concept of a wash-only business for most people is just almost comical. You can run a wash-only business, but you have to have a whole raft of what I call specialties about doing it that way. Because most people have oodles and all these dogs that need to be clipped. So in 2006, it was maybe 15 or 20% clipping and 80% washing. And now it's the exact opposite. It's 80% clipping and 20% washing.
And that is because of the oodle dog. So every different oodle dog, that came into being at around that time just completely shifted the business.
And also, change management also happened when clients wanted more. And whether it was their dog that needed to be clipped or not, they wanted a much more pampered experience. So having a basic low-end service, that business would have died if we'd kept it alone and hadn't changed it. So we ended up going from 200 franchisees back to the 140s, where we had people who just simply said, I've taken the metal trailer, I've sold it, good luck.
So they just walked away.
Yeah.
And then you opened another brand? Was
Correct.
that-
At the 2012 conference, we came up with Dash Dog Wash. And what we said is, for those who wanted to continue to wash-only business, you can join Dash. So we're going to take Hydro Dog and upskill it and make it a premium product called Blue Wheelers. And if you want to go stay way at the bottom doing wash only, because back then it was about 50-50, 50% wash, 50% clipping business, then you become Dash. So pick your trailer, pick which direction you want to go, but pick one of them. And we thought that was a great way of solving the resistance to change. But unfortunately, that wasn't the way it happened. People still said no. They couldn't
deal
change.
with the change.
Even with years of notice, from 2006 to 2012, they still couldn't get their head around change.
So you clean them up, get
Yeah.
rid of those, get everyone on the bus,
Yeah.
so to speak, and then you've just been going through a big growth.
Yep.
And now we have
Yep.
just under 200. I think last check, just on maybe about 190, and
Blue Wheelers
Dash Dog Wash.
Yeah.
So Dash
in each.
total.
Oh,
In
total.
total, there's
So-
about 35
No more.
Dash.
41 Dash.
Are we 41 now?
Yeah.
Wow.
And about the 150 Blue Wheelers.
Okay.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's a
no,
good
Dash
story.
is-
Like there's a lot of conflict in all of that.
There
that
is.
you've been
There
dealing
is.
with that.
Because I will stand here today and say I was the first person that after, several years of running Dash, of just going, we had, I think, maybe within the first 2 to 3 years, we had maybe 3 or 4 franchisees. And I just felt we were putting too much energy into something that wasn't growing. And I felt at that time, let's just focus on Blue Wheelers. And my darling husband here said, no,
hold on a
we've
minute.
invested too much.
I'm going to rephrase this. What she said is, I think it's time to kill Dash Dog Wash.
Yes.
Mistake.
And he
Big
said,
mistake.
no,
Huge.
we've invested too
But
much in this.
You look like you're a bit of a stubborn prick, aren't you?
I would have said that, John.
Where did you get that
I'm an
idea from?
easygoing, pushover.
I'm the easygoing one.
No, but
I'm the go with the flow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I'm being really serious here because
No, so am I.
there are qualities about franchisors that I think you. This is, I don't like this wording, but are you anal as well? Are you really disciplined, organised?
Structured.
Yeah,
I'll put it this way.
hyper-focused.
I've got a desk that when you see my desk, there's a mouse, a keyboard, 2 screens, and 1 small stack of paper.
Yeah.
You see Janie's desk. Well, you don't see Janie's desk.
There's just shit everywhere.
There's just shit everywhere. And no
which is a
matter how
great
much
point.
So
I
yin
try
and
and
yang.
tidy it up within 24
really good.
hours, it's back to shit
But are you,
everywhere.
I got to ask Janie,
who I am.
is he intolerant?
Totally.
Can I explain why? And I think it's actually important.
I haven't finished summing you up yet.
Okay, so go for it. No, you go for it. What else?
No,
What other?
No, but I think it's really
It's a personality type.
It is definitely
100%.
Absolutely.
And if your powers for good are for the franchisees.
Yeah.
Totally.
And that's why you've been successful, because you're so bloody minded and I'm saying that in a nice
Yeah.
way.
I'm going to own this. You're completely right.
That you're determined to do the right thing by them.
Yeah.
And you fight no matter what, and you won't put up with any shit along the way.
100%.
That this can be polarizing.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Your personality type can be polarizing.
Absolutely.
But I bet you your franchisees, they quite like you.
There's people who will.
Secretly.
They don't admit
No,
to
No,
it.
there are people.
we do.
You know what I mean?
No. There are franchisees in our team who totally get where I come from and totally get the fact that I am completely committed to them, and that this business exists because I am uncompromising. And they go, Martin and Janie Rose, great team. Janie's a soft, nice one. Martin's got a vision and can be pretty tough. It's a business that exists because the coin does have 2 sides.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and to help people who join our business, we, for example, have a new training manager that joined us, and she didn't come from within the franchising sphere. And I talked about Ray Kroc from McDonald's. And I'm not saying I'm anything like Ray Kroc, but there's some characteristics behind the way he ran McDonald's and created that powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say to you, some of those characteristics are the same as mine. He was uncompromising. He was tough. He was principled. He understood that the greater good, and he understood that customers want a high-quality service. They don't want excuses. They don't want stories. They want absolutely the same repeatable experience. They want it because brands are trust. In fact, brands are people. They have absolutely personalities, and they are all about trust. In fact, brands of trust is something that Steve Jobs said. And you have to have someone who stands up for consumers, for the brands, for the franchisees, and says, I'm sorry, your standards aren't right. Your trailer is filthy. You're not using our products. You are letting down 190 other people.
Yep.
And you shouldn't be part of this family because you don't respect your customers, you don't respect us, but most importantly, you don't respect nationally other people who depend upon you.
Yeah.
But I sort of get the balance. I haven't met you before. I've only met you a couple of times over the years. But from what I can see today, you are principled is a really, really good word. I think that's really powerful and sums it up. But your personality type tends to not listen to others, but I see that your wife's input is very, very important to you, and you respect that input, which is a great balance.
Yeah, we
think
are
that's-
we
is
are
that
a
a fair
solid
comment?
team.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, we are a solid team. We do we do. You know, he just described me as nice and what soft.
No,
Yeah.
Really?
Bullshit.
I'm very good at the sucker punch.
You grew up in Glasgow, but that's because it is an interesting thing. Like husband and wife teams in business.
Yeah.
Like you talk about not, being in business with your kids.
Yes.
But I know my wife said if she's unfortunately in business with me at the moment because I don't know how to do a lot of things that she knows how to do. But that's been balancing that out. Like that's going to work together, coming home and stopping it when you get home and going, okay, we're now at home. We can't talk about work the whole time.
We've got a few rules, but they're often broken.
Yeah.
Not talking about the business just before we go to bed and sleep.
Yeah,
That works most of the days.
Depends
most
on the
months,
day.
unless we've got a challenge or two.
And
yes.
we do try and stay in our own box.
in your own lanes.
Yeah.
Demarcation dispute, to use the legal term.
Yeah.
Don't you get involved with mine, I won't get involved in yours.
Yeah.
We're getting close to running out of time, I just wanted to ask you one more question, and then Bruce has got a couple that he will ask, which is really good while we're on this topic. What's the plan, do you think, for you guys? What's the is it 300? Is it 400?
That's a good question. But can I actually tie up a loose end? Because you actually left one in the last conversation, which is the fact that I've got two ears and one mouth. We look at our boardroom table as our family kitchen table at the office. And when we have a meeting, we bring our team into that meeting and we actually ask them to tell us exactly what they think. When we walk into the office with Janie and Martin, no one has titles, no one has badges, they're all left at the door. In fact, that's the way we run the business now. None of the people who work for us at in the office and nationally at that support level, we're just all equals. And if I don't get their honesty, if I don't get their communication, if we don't have that kitchen table discussion, we're all the lesser. And I've learned over the years the greatest value comes from collaboration, but at some point Janie and I need to make that decision.
Yeah.
So you asked an interesting question. I don't think we'll get to 400. I'd like to think we'll get to 3, but I'm more pragmatic and go, I think we'll get to 250 under our ownership over the next few years. I don't know. I'm in my 60s, Janie's in her 60s. I don't see myself adding value at 80 or even at 75. At some point, you wake up and you go, you have a use by date. It's not today, it's not tomorrow, and it's not next year. But at some point you're going to go, where is my use by date? And someone will tap you on the shoulder, and it may be Janie, might tap me, I might tap her, it might be my GM, I have an amazing relationship with him. And, he can tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, it's time.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying it?
Yes.
Bill?
I think there are
Janie,
days when you have challenge.
We have good days and bad days, like anything. But, in terms of overall seeing a plan and strategizing towards that plan, I still get excited by that. I still go, there's work to be done. Yeah. It's all possible. And
Fire
I go, in terms of growth, there is not a day that goes by where we are not letting customers down simply because we don't have enough groomers on the road. That's an absolute given. On Facebook, on the call centre, we don't have a groomer in this area, we can't help you. We don't have a groomer in this area, we can't help you. So growth possibilities is there. It's just getting people to believe that it's possible, that they can actually make a good living from this. And that's a hard thing to educate. That's where we rely on our team, on our franchisees to talk the business to another franchisee that's possibly going to come on board.
We did some quick analysis of every team member that joined us in the last 2 years, and we realised that they reached their 12-month goals in 4 months. In other words, they were actually kicking goals, achieving their income, making a living, and happy after 4 months. Now, I don't know how many other businesses that actually do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
remarkable.
Yeah.
It is.
So we do need to wrap up, but thank you very much. Last question though is just about a tip. So we've got our audience of franchisors generally, or people thinking of franchising. What sort of tip would you have for a franchisor? We'll get one from each of you. A tip for a potential franchisor or an emerging franchisor.
I would say the biggest trait that a franchisor has to have. Sorry, can I do that one again?
What is this?
No.
The biggest trait that a franchisor has to have is patience. absolute and utter patience and be able to listen to what people actually want out there and deliver that.
Mine is a two-part. The first is be careful what you wish for. Always pick franchisees who are aligned with your values so that they actually help you grow your business in partnership. And the next thing is to understand the cost of compromise, because saying yes to people sometimes ends up causing you more pain than actually saying no for cause.
Yeah.
So have a vision, have a plan, have a strategy, and bring people into that. Empower them through an understanding of where you want to collectively go as a team, and have people who actually share that and come along with you.
It's good.
Well
Hey,
done.
congratulations. It's a good story.
Thank you.
Thank
It's been
you.
great fun telling it. I've enjoyed it.
I do want to get back to later after we turn this off, how we proposed to you as well. So I want to find that out.
We'll get more of that later.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for listening to our BDC Partners podcast. Hope you've enjoyed it. And remember to like it and subscribe. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.